and welcome to the Election Corner on One Man Think Tank. Today I'm going to redo a previous video of mine, What Would a Blue Wave Look Like? In American cultural zeitgeist, we have a very strong belief of, well, the underdog story. The idea of the guys behind coming in for an amazing victory. So I thought, let's give the Democrats their shot at that. What is the best chance the Democrats have in the Senate? If you know my normal prediction, you know I currently have it as a literal 50-50 split, with the deciding factor of the Senate being the presidency. However, I believe in a very good election year for the Democrats. Let's say coronavirus goes long, Donald Trump keeps making mistakes, his popularity tanks, and a few Republicans say a few, racist things before Election Day. We could very well have a blowout election. Now, this is the furthest extreme you can get with this. I am in no way predicting this is happening. This is a maybe 5% of the time max, probably 1% election scenario. So, we'll go state by state and discuss how it would happen. Starting in the Northeast. Well, actually, we'll start with the country as a whole. The Democrats would start off by holding each of their seats. We'll get to Alabama in a moment, including New England, New England, Michigan, and the rest. This would put Democrats at their current 46 seats. Like I said, we'll get to Alabama in a moment, but in their best scenario, they do hold the state. But let's start with Maine. Susan Collins' seat. A contentious seat that's been going more and more blue. Right now I have it marked as tilt Democrat, and I actually think it's going to be getting more blue by the time we reach Election Day. Susan Collins is in many ways the fallen king of Maine. She was the Republican, the moderate. She had the perfect opportunity, the perfect narrative. She could remain a Republican in a blue state. And then she had to go and vote for Kavanaugh and put a full-throated defense for him. Had she just remained quiet, had she not elicited moral outrage, had she maybe pulled a Mitt Romney on impeachment and voted Trump guilty, knowing that it wouldn't have any effect because there was still one open Republican seat, she could have held this seat, but she has chosen not to, and there are many reasons why she could possibly, but I'm not here to put myself in her head. Instead, I'm going to say Maine would go blue in the Democrats' best-case scenario, because it would go blue in most of the current case scenarios. We'll do the South last, because the South is interesting and a source of a bit of controversy in my comments section, it seems, or at least lively discussion. Iowa. Iowa would go blue in the Democrats' best-case scenario. So what would be necessary for this? Well, one, the current governor, Kim Reynolds, is not doing a good job of making herself popular. Let's say she has been considered a very poor handler of the coronavirus crisis. Donald Trump isn't very popular in the state right now. And also, Iowa is a poorer rural state. They've been hurt a lot by Trump's policies. That could cause Republicans to just not show up. But also, some of them to flip, and that's what the Democrats need in this scenario. A big rural flip alongside strong turnout from urban areas, and Joni Ernst loses her seat, ironically enough, by no fault of her own, except for her party affiliation. Continuing out here, we're going to have a little bit more safety for the Republicans. In South Dakota, forgive me, allergies. Nebraska, Wyoming, and Idaho, great news for the Republicans. You've held on to some of the safest seats for your party. Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, and Nebraska all have, let's just say, non-important challengers. They are not really backed by the party. I mean, they have the party name and they've got a bit of money, but the money's really going to Texas and Kentucky and Colorado and Arizona and Maine. Meat and potatoes, interesting states for the Democrats, trying to give them as many Senate seats as possible. they are all but abandoned in the eyes of the Democrats. Montana, on the other hand, will go blue. Normally this wouldn't happen, but all this requires is Steve Bullock running a solid campaign. And if he runs a solid campaign, he gets the seat. He's very popular in the state of Montana, and during 2018, they did re-elect their Democratic senator, showing the state is still elastic at the federal level, which to many people is still quite surprising. And having a moderate Democrat like Bullock running could be very good for the Democrats in this state. I'd say this is a 45% of the time Democrats win Montana. Now let's go out into the far wastes of the last frontier to Alaska. This state would also go Democratic. Now, kind of. It would actually technically, I believe, go independent. Right now, the current senator is not popular, but not unpopular. All this requires is him taking some hits, and the people of Alaska just being fed up. They have a long-standing history of basically voting between Republican and Independent, and having coalition governments at the state level. So them flipping at the Senate level is not that uncommon. However, they are basically guaranteed to remain stagnant for the presidential race. In the Southwest, more seats for the Democrats. Colorado and Arizona are both great seats for the Democrats in a blue wave. Colorado is basically guaranteed, I'd say, 95% of the time right now. Arizona, about 60% of the time. Both states are trending more and more blue and carry with them 2 senators each. That's nothing to sneeze at. And really counteract Republican holds out here. So I don't really need to go into them too much. You were already expecting them to go blue. As for Kansas, about 55% of the time will go red, 45% go blue. And this is going to be on Chris Kobach. It doesn't matter how poorly Trump handles things or how well the governor does. It matters how Chris Kobach campaigns and whether or not people have forgotten how terrible he is. And maybe enough people in Kansas go, well, he can't do that much damage in the Senate, and I want Republicans to maintain control, they'll vote for him. But, like I said, 45% of the time, Chris Kobachs and loses the Senate race. Right side for Republicans, they do hold on to Oklahoma. I cannot see any path for the Democrats in Oklahoma now, at least for this election. As for Texas, it goes blue as well. Why does Texas go blue? Very simple. It's nearly a purple state right now, and it just requires one good election year for the Democrats or one bad election year for the Republicans for it to flip, and this would be one good election year for the Democrats. And also, and I'm just going to throw this out there, if we were to do a vote-by-mail election, as this scenario would likely ascribe, because this is also under a scenario of an elongated coronavirus pandemic, that would override quite a few of Texas' voting suppression. And that would kind of really push the Democrats over the top if all of a sudden a bunch of people suddenly became enfranchised. That's why so many states like Virginia, Colorado, and what will soon be Arizona, most likely, and probably North Carolina, go from being the sort of, oh, red going blue, blue. It's just a blue state. Because the Republicans hold themselves in power by using voter suppression methods, such as voter ID, preventing same-day voting, voter purges, etc. And once they're gone, out of power, all those suppression methods are gone rid of, and suddenly you've enfranchised a whole bunch of people who are going to vote for the Democrats. Which, as you can guess, flips the state blue permanently. It's basically, we're no longer seeing much of a purple phase. Really more of a waning red phase and then a solid blue phase. Speaking of red, Arkansas and Louisiana. Both of these states, they have Democratic challengers. Louisiana even re-elected their Democratic governor last year, but they're not going to go blue at the Senate level unless something big happens. By this, I mean, like, the senator shoots someone in the head. Big. But for right now, they hold it this. And are helping, because in the best case scenario world for Democrats, Republicans' goals aren't to maintain control of the Senate, it's to keep the Democrats from a supermajority. And now we give them one more before we start doing the rest of the South. Tennessee. I have long said Tennessee is a solid red state. People like to imagine that it's a little bit more flexible because there's no incumbent, but incumbency bias, or lack thereof, has become less and less important over the years, and party affiliation has become more and more important. That's just how things are running now. Now let's go state by state in the South. A area that is weakening for the Republicans, and like I said, once it breaks and it goes blue, it's not going back. Or at least for this Republican Party. Let's start with West Virginia, which would go blue. Why would West Virginia go blue? Because Richard Ojeda is actually a pretty solid candidate when you look at him. He hasn't had much electoral history or much of an electoral history of winning, but he's done very well at overperforming his polling in West Virginia. And to become a Democratic senator in West Virginia, all you really need is to overperform your polling in red areas and have Joe Manchin come out and say how you're his best buddy. And Ojeda so far is doing the first of those, and who knows, maybe in October we might get a little bit of a Joe Manchin tours West Virginia saying how great this guy is. Not to mention, Joe Manchin has periodically been looking about wanting to go back to run for the governor of West Virginia, and a lot of the burden's removed off him if there's a second Democratic governor or Democratic senator from West Virginia. Kentucky's actually becoming a lot more of a contested battleground now that the Democratic governor is polling and doing so well with coronavirus. He's considered the best governor in the 50 states right now. That's not something you understate. Now, of course, you have Massachusetts, which also ranks their Republican governor very highly. States can be bipartisan. However, their senators are really popular, and most likely wouldn't flip, and they most likely won't flip their senators for a Republican. Mitch McConnell is still the most unpopular senator in the U.S. He is seen in many ways as a guy who's preventing people from getting benefits. He is seen as a guy who's keeping people from getting coronavirus aid, and the longer it goes on, the more it's going to hurt him. This is also the first election where Mitch McConnell has really put himself in the national spotlight, something he hasn't done before. You're actually hearing about him in quite a few media interviews and things like that, or news pieces and such. So this could flip Kentucky. This is a 25% of the time scenario, but 25 is still 1 in 4, and that's enough for me to say, in a blue wave, Kentucky flips. North Carolina, I'm already expecting to go blue, so that one flips. And now you see why the Republicans are in such dire straits. I told you before Alabama's going to go blue, and the reason why is pretty simple, in the best case scenario. In this scenario, you have coronavirus, poor Trump approval ratings, low turnout from Republicans, high turnout from Democrats. Alabama rely, under all 4 of those conditions, if they were in place, I would put Doug Jones as having a 40% chance of winning the state. That's incumbency bias mixed with high black turnout and low white turnout. But that could work for the Democrats. So now the real question is, can the Republicans hold on to these remaining seats? Because if the Democrats get 3 more, or 2 more, they have a supermajority, meaning they don't even need to touch the filibuster. They can just ignore it. And I got some minor good news for the Republicans. Mississippi is going to be red. I know in my general election predictions for the Senate, I like to put Mississippi as likely red, though I keep going back and forth on that. I don't see, in the scenario I've laid out, coronavirus, low Republican, high Democrat, and poor Trump approval ratings, I don't see the numbers there. And you know what? Maybe in October when I'm doing this one last time, I'll say Mississippi's going to go blue. But it's not going to go blue this time. I don't see a pathway forward. There just aren't the votes there for it for the Democrats. It would require Democrats overperforming by 100,000 and Republicans underperforming by 100,000 for it to even be close. So Mississippi would go red. As for South Carolina, Lindsey Graham's popularity is steadily decreasing. It has not gone back up. There is a high rate of, let's say, energy behind the Democratic candidate Harrison. Harrison? I can't remember. It's either Harrelson or Harrison. And, being totally honest, support for Republicans has been waning in South Carolina, partially due to its neighbors changing opinions. And for right now, I'll say South Carolina has as good of a chance as flipping as Kentucky. As such, I'm putting it as blue. And lastly, we have Georgia, the big deciding state. And what I'll say is, in a blue wave scenario, both seats in Georgia go blue. That's really good for the Democrats. And the reason why they both go blue is because all you need to do to flip Georgia is flip the Atlanta suburbs. And in this scenario, those suburbs are flipping hard. As such, we are left with a scenario where Democrats have 61 seats, a supermajority in the Senate. The last time anyone's had a supermajority was during Barack Obama's first term. Or the first half of Barack Obama's first term. This would be a great boon to the Democrats because it means they don't even need to consider taking action about the filibuster. Do I think it's going to happen? No, this scenario is not likely to happen. This is their best case scenario. Like I said, 5 to 1% of the time, it would require all of the pieces dropping into place. Their efforts in contested states like Maine, Arizona, North Carolina, and Montana and Kansas all panning out. It would require them flipping Colorado, which they're expected to do, and holding Alabama, which they're not. It requires them taking a lot of their likely states, the Republican likely states, namely Iowa, Texas, Kansas, and the Georgia seats, as well as overperforming in states they weren't expected to do as well in, including South Carolina, West Virginia, and Alaska. This is the best case scenario for the Democrats and the Republicans' worst nightmare. And that is all I have to say on this topic. If you liked the video, please leave a like down below. Also, while you're down there, please leave a comment or a question. I'm always curious to see what the community has to say. Otherwise, if you want to see more from this channel, please click the subscribe button and the notification bell. Otherwise, as always, have a great day.